Penny, don't breathe on it.
Ben, come on. Ben, come. All right. So I bet you know what the influence that the internet has on young adults and children. But do you know what the influence the internet has on study habits of college students? Like everything else, the internet has both positive and negative effects. According to Karan from Bright Hub Education, 90% of college students have an internet access computer. They're available to connect to the internet. And out of those 90%, 65 are able to connect to the internet and have access to the internet with their computers and such. Whereas several years ago, students used to go to the library and research their topics in books and articles and actually read interviews, whereas now on the internet, all that information is available through the internet. So during the time that we have today, I will inform you of the positive and negative effects the internet has on the study habits of college students. So first, let's talk about the positive effects. The internet is both effective and efficient. With the internet, there are ways to broaden your approach to how you look at things. So if you find an article that you like, you can click on it, read it, and then if you find it completely helpful with what you're researching or studying, there are usually references below that you can click on those links to help expand your knowledge. Because of this, teachers have observed that students are becoming more engaged and more interested in the topics that they are teaching. In what we can learn. What?
Sorry about that.
In the article, what we can learn from a China comparison, teachers observed that students become more engaged in what they're learning because the internet gives them a broader aspect of it. Also, there's not as much library time, and because they have all the resources available to them through the internet. And students are also crediting the internet to holding their interest and keeping them engaged in what they're learning. So now for the negative effects. So with the internet, there's also a hardship of finding reliable sources. There's tons of resources available, but finding good academic scholarly sources is very hard. You can type in your keywords to any search engines like Bing or Google, and you come up with thousands of results. So students usually end up using unreliable, unacademic sources like blogs or so on, and they don't end up not developing what they're actually working on. So students end up not having good study habits or research habits because they don't know how to fully develop a topic. And they just end up with unreliable sources. Also, the internet takes away from face-to-face time. Students end up reading more instead of interacting with the material they're actually taking in. Several students that I've worked with my 3 years at Cascadia have found it very helpful to actually sit and talk about what we've been working on rather than just reading the materials in the book. And lastly, for the negative effects, Nicholas Carn, author of Is Google Making Us Stupid, observed that the internet has had an impact on him to where he's had a shorter attention span. He can't focus on the academic works he's reading, and he can't write as long because he doesn't have the attention span to actually sit and read a full paper. Also, because of the internet, there's a lot of pre-written work available to students, so they end up plagiarizing, and they copy and paste things, so they don't get time to actually research. And they also can have essays written for them. They just type in, they get paid whoever they want to write their paper. So because of the internet, there's a lot more resources available for that. So let me sum up what we've been over. We've talked about the positive effects, how the internet is now effective and efficient, and how there's a lot more resources available, and the positive effects and the negative effects of the shorter attention spans, the unreliable resources, and such. So I'm glad to inform you of the positive and negative effects of the internet has on the study habits of college students, and I hope you enjoyed listening.
All right. Yeah.
All right.
I bet you know the several influence the internet has on children and young adults, but do you know about the impact that the internet has had on college students and their studying habits? Just like everything else, the internet has both positive and negative effects. According to Caron from the Bright Hub Education, 90% of college students have access or own a laptop, desktop, or computer, and of that 90%, 65 have access to the internet. Several years ago, most college students used to go to the library and actually do the research themselves in the library with hard copies of books, articles, and magazines, and so on. Whereas today, students spend most of their time on the internet just browsing through websites to try and find information that will help them. So during the time that we have today, I will inform you of some of the ways that the internet has impacted college students' study habits, both positive and negative. So first, let's talk about the positive effects. So some of the positive effects is that the internet is efficient and effective. When it's effective and efficient, if you look on a link and you find an article that you like, you can scroll down to the bottom to the references, and you can click on those and it takes you to another article that will most likely be helpful in what you're researching or looking at. Also, with the internet, there's not as much study time in the library. You don't have to go and look through books that, and in the end, might not have as much information as you would like. Also, according to the article, What We Can Learn from a China Comparison, students observed that because of the internet, students are being more involved, more interested, and in the end going more in depth in the research that they're doing. And students are also giving credit to the internet for increasing their interest in a topic. So now for the negative effects. So one of the major issues that I have found with using the internet instead of books is there's so many sources online that aren't helpful. If you just go to a normal search engine, there won't be as many good resources. And you can just type in a keywords and you come up with thousands of resources. Whereas those aren't helpful, and students end up using those like top 10 sources and end up not having a good paper or a good topic and stuff like that. Whereas if you learn to fully use other research sources, you'll have a much better success. So you end up creating poor research habits and end up not doing as well in classes. Also, the internet takes away from face-to-face time. Whereas I've worked with several students at Cascadia who say that they prefer to use face-to-face time when they're talking to people and studying. And so they wish they had more time doing that. And then according to Nicholas Carr, he's an author and he wrote the article, Is Google Making Us Stupid? He has observed that the internet has caused him to have a short attention span. He says that it takes away from things and he gets distracted very easily. So lastly, because of the internet, there's a lot of pre-written work that's available. You can go rebuy essays and sell them, and people have a lot more chances of plagiarism. So let me sum up what we've been over. We've talked about the positive effects, like the internet being effective and efficient, and then the negative effects, how it takes away from study time, lots of unreliable resources, and short attention spans. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I'm glad to inform you of both the positive and negative study habits both the positive and negative influence that the internet has had on the study habits of college students.
Bye.